Coming to you from the Malace TV studios in Troy, Michigan, this is the Malace Cast.
Welcome back to the Malace Cast, the official podcast of Malace HR. I'm LJ.
And I'm Sarah.
And today we've got a ton to talk to you about. Sarah, it's been a little while. We're back.
We are back, baby. Oh, yeah.
I know.
What have you been up to recently?
Had a birthday.
Happy birthday.
Got a promotion,
Nice.
all those little milestone things in a year. How about you? You promote yourself lately?
I have thought about it many times. I have, I haven't pulled the trigger just yet, but really been focused on building the business and starting up a new IT segment of our company. So focusing on the IT industry and providing solutions to those companies as well. So that's taken up quite a bit of my time, but happy to be back in the saddle with you once again. It just feels good. Feels natural, right? Today we're going to be talking about some staffing myths out there within the industry. But before we begin, I wanted to share a few stats. Last year, approximately 12.7 million people were employed through a staffing company. And on average per week, around 2.4 million people were on the payroll of a staffing company every single week last year. So obviously, staffing is a huge part of our economy, but there are still plenty of companies out there who do not believe it's worth it, or there's an unnecessary cost associated with using a staffing firm.
That's certainly how I felt for a long time. A couple lifetimes ago, before I was working here, I was an HR manager, and get approached by staffing companies a lot with, we'd like to staff for you, and owners, be as they are, don't want to spend the money on it. Well, then when somebody sat down and actually kind of explained to me, there's actually a return on your investment in this, then, now they want to listen.
Right.
And so I built a relationship with a staffing company, and lo and behold, now I'm a leader in a staffing company. So it worked out well. I'm not going to lie. In the beginning, it did just look like spending a bunch of unnecessary money on getting people to come in and work for you. So I am happy to bust this myth, be a myth buster here today with you.
Love that.
But and coming from a place of personal experience.
But I think when it comes to hiring somebody, there's so many factors out there that people aren't necessarily thinking about. It's not just calling somebody up and bringing them on board. There's advertising, there's the time spent from your team looking for those candidates, screening them, interviews, how many people you may have to interview that don't necessarily go well or go your way. And then you have to start the process over again. So there's a lot of, and then the onboarding, and that's another big one, the training involved, right? So you have all these different aspects that, you have to be cognizant of. And that's really built into why staffing is such a great service for these organizations. Now, we have those tangible costs, but I always like to look at the intangible costs as well. When someone doesn't have a person in that position or in that role, they're unable to fulfill or perform to the contract that they have signed with their client, which is costing them more money and costing long-term and short-term and potentially future business opportunities down the road.
For sure.
Too.
And not to mention, if you leave that seat open too long and other people are filling in for them, they're likely to get burnt out from taking on more work, working more hours because that seat stayed open, because you don't have anybody working on it that really knows how to do it effectively and efficiently.
Right. And who do companies turn to in those situations? It's usually their highest performers.
Yes.
And now you're like you said, you're burning out the high performers, and you could even cause them to find a new work elsewhere, or new job elsewhere. Excuse me. And a lot of times what we'll see is when companies shy away from staffing, or they don't have the budget necessarily to employ the services of one of these companies, they start reaching out to independent contracting companies, and these are the organizations where, you're being billed $100, $150, $200 an hour. And once that person leaves for the day, you have to keep paying them these exorbitant costs rather than actually finding the right person, and then also with you're in charge of our recruiters, right now you're the leader of the recruiting team. Each one of those recruiters has a salary, has benefits. And if you look at the cost of hiring one of those people. When you tap into a staffing agency, you're getting their entire team for free.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting,
Sure are.
you're adding, most of our clients have their own internal recruiting staff, and that's great. We work as a strategic partner with them. But why not, double the size of your team for nothing?
And our team here is skilled. They're trained. They know what to look for. They're looking at things in resumes that you're probably missing, and they're using resources that companies don't have because they're not a staffing company. So how could they?
Right.
The amount of people that are in our system because they've applied to positions, the people that we know in certain areas that we can reach out to at any given point and be like, hey, I'm looking for this in your area. Do you happen to know anybody? And sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do.
Yeah.
And how are you going to find that person if you're not already working with someone who is there doing the job and inundated with this work that you're trying to pull off on your own? It's our specialty. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So to not use the staffing company, I'm first person to say it took me a minute to buy into it. But once I did, it's a no-brainer.
Right. And we're in the people business. We know people.
I know a guy who knows a guy who knows another guy.
And our clients are in manufacturing, automotive, and facilities, and you name it, they're in it, and they're experts in their field. And for us, our expertise, it comes right back to people. And then here's some other interesting information. This actually came from Career Builder. Now, 74% of employers admit to hiring the wrong candidate.
It happens.
I think anybody who's in business has seen that and experienced that before. And Career Builder estimates that the average cost of a wrong hire is $15,000 roughly.
That's a lot. There's all kinds of reasons why somebody doesn't work out.
Right.
They might present themselves really well in an interview and then they start working and they're just a negative Nelly and nobody wants to be around them. Or, maybe they put a couple things on their resume that weren't quite true. You hear that all the time. It's another really good reason to work with a staffing company because our recruiters are trained to kind of sniff that stuff out. We see it all day, every day.
Yep.
And to kind of challenge those things on a resume that might not stick out to you, but because we're so inundated with it, it's pretty obvious. And so we'll ask the questions to see if that experience is actually there. Plus, when you're working with a staffing company, they know you.
I know you. You know you. And I know you know that I know you.
They know you because you work together all the time and they probably place people with you. So they know your culture and what you're trying to build. And so they will cater, or we will cater candidates to a company because we know who you are and what you're trying to become. So what's better than having kind of like that great relationship in your back pocket with a staffing company that might send you somebody that you don't necessarily think you need, but they know that they might be a good fit for your company. And all of a sudden, it's a game changer employee,
right? Because
they're looking out for your best interests.
Right. And they're trying to be strategic partners.
That's right.
And everything in business is relationship based. And it's funny that you bring up some of those reasons because those are some of the similar ones that these employers had mentioned. 53% negative attitude, 46% said it was due to absenteeism, or they lacked the abilities they claimed to have. That was 45%. And those are all things. It almost kind of reminds me, and I'm trying to think of the exact, quote or whatever it was. Of, you don't really get to know somebody like in your personal life until after, it's like 3 months or something along those lines. That's where you really get to see who somebody is.
Right.
And, who somebody is in the interview and who they end up being on the job could be completely different by the end of a 90-day period. And which is why we are so big on the contract to hire. It gives you that evaluation period. So you can kind of see some of those red flags as they're happening and then reach out to a staffing company or the company that you're working with and say, hey, we need to find someone else. And and you are not at risk at some of these different, unemployment, some of the work comp, and some of those other issues that come with, terminating somebody from a role.
That's definitely one of the nice things about working with the staffing company. I know that last year you'd done a presentation, I think it was at Northwood, where you were explaining to a room full of business owners what the markets are looking like, what people want in jobs. Right. And you were able to open a lot of eyes to, well, I never thought about it that way. And bring in things like generational differences and what the younger folks that are coming in now want versus what, some of the older people in the industry, elder people in the industry are have always been dealing with, and they don't think anything. So like work-life balance, for instance, you know, that's become more important than a lot of things. That, you know, it's not what it used to be, but because this is our life, this is what we do, you're able to show that to companies, and kind of, it's another way that you've shown that we're a trusted advisor, that you can come to us and say, hey, you know, we've been paying this for this job. What does the market say? And we can run a report and tell you right now that, and that's another resource that you wouldn't probably have at your disposal, but we do, because that's our world.
Well, and, you know, and like you said, when you're talking to hundreds of people a day and thousands of people a month, you know, it gives you some very valuable insight on some of those things, like the work-life balance or the generational differences. And, you know, we could do an entire podcast just on that. And I think we actually had. We had in the past an updated one at least. But those are things that's the kind of service where you have your ear to the ground and picking up how the different industries are moving and how the workforce is moving. You know, the last 10 years have brought so many different changes. And we are seeing this with the IT side of business. I mean, it's almost like a 6-month deal. There's a brand new, you know, program or process or software out there. I mean, everything changes so quickly in today's economy that if you aren't sitting there with your ear to the ground, figuring out all those different trends as far as the workforce goes, you're going to be sitting in an office all by yourself. Right.
And, you know, we're doing that. So you can go focus on your own business, and we'll do that part of your business for you.
Right. What's another, you know, misconception that you had about staffing before you even got into staffing?
Well, you know, I thought, and I think at one point this was true, but like that it was just temporary labor and it's a waste of time. Right. So, we do have a lot of options where we could do, you know, like the kind of the evaluation period that you were talking about before, where it's a contract, you know, sometimes 90 days, 6 months, however long, whatever makes sense. We also work with some of the biggest companies in America, maybe even the world, with direct hires that we place on pretty much like a weekly basis. And that's just somebody who we go find them and you pay us a finder's fee, but they're onboarded as your employee from the gate.
Yeah. And that's a huge part of our business, is that direct hire model. And no, I agree. You know, a lot of people that I talk to, when they think of staffing, they think of like it, you know, quote unquote, temp agency. Right. And really that goes kind of against what we're trying to accomplish, because we want people in these positions that are going to be long term, and we want to make sure that we're finding the right person for our clients so that we don't have to keep doing our job over again. Because every candidate that doesn't work out for our clients and their team just means that we have to go back to the drawing board and essentially start from scratch.
Right.
So for me, I've always viewed staffing as a long-term partnership, as a long-term.
Did we just become best friends? Yep.
And it's funny. It you know, we've had a few instances where we have hired somebody under contract. They were hired indirectly, and then worked their way up within that organization to the point where they became our contact at that client.
I know we're thinking about the same person too.
Right. And I don't want to use names or whatever, but it's incredible to see that these you know, short-term evaluation periods that we mentioned can turn into these long-term careers. And ideally, that's our goal.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, the better off that our clients are and that the people we place are within their jobs, the better off everyone is.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the building relationships with clients. It's the building relationships with our candidates that go to the clients, and it just transcends. And there's no better feeling than when that person reaches out and they're like, hey, our PA people inside can't find these people. We need some Malace people in here, and then we get them for them. So yeah, that's a pretty good feeling and a pretty good bow to tie on everything. I mean, that's the circle that we're trying to tie the knot onto. But yeah, I think we busted some myths, man.
Yeah, I'm feeling like a staffing myth buster for sure.
We should get shirts made.
We should. Yeah. maybe next podcast.
Okay.
You know. But yeah, well, let's wrap it up today. You know, this is gonna be part of our streamlined podcast moving forward. So I think we busted a few myths today. We're gonna focus on our next podcast, talking primarily about job seekers and the myths associated with the staffing companies for job seekers, and what they should know is fact and what is actually fiction.
Yeah. So I mean, if you have any other questions about any of this stuff, you know, we love what we do. And there's really nothing to lose by reaching out to us, and potentially everything to gain.
100%. This has been the Malace Cast. Make sure to like and subscribe. You will be seeing our faces on a more regular basis as we continue to produce content to this channel. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Malace Cast, the official podcast of Malace HR. Don't forget to subscribe now to Malace TV, available on YouTube, and we'll see you on our next Malace Cast.